Hello, and welcome back to my Relationship Masters book review series. And today I'd like to introduce you to, or you may already be familiar with, the work of John Gottman and his classic The Seven Principles for Making Marriage Work. Now, this is a great book, and one of the reasons why I consider John Gottman to be a relationship master is because he simply is, and you'll realise that as I go through his work. But also, most of the other people that would be considered relationship masters use John's work for reference purposes in books and material that they produce. And the thing about John's work is that it's pretty evidence-based stuff. It's research-based, and he wrote this book initially, the Seven Principles for Making Marriage Work, because he recognized, this is back in the 70s, he recognized that there wasn't actually very much evidence for the work that people were doing. People, there were therapists working with couples, and as far as he was concerned, there wasn't much research being done on the efficacy of that, and he didn't seem to think that there were great results coming out of it. So the upshot of it was that he and his wife Julia set up what came to be known as the Love Lab. In fact, it was an apartment that was geared for couples to come and to move into, and they could live there, and he had it rigged up with cameras, but also with all kinds of equipment to measure their physiology, their blood pressure, their blood flow, their sweat output, even their immune system, and to observe them as they went through their day-to-day life with each other and the interactions, and just generally how they operated as a couple. And then all of this would be meticulously analysed, and over the years he's come to see thousands of couples, all ages and stages of marriages, and has come up with extensive evidence on various conclusions that he made. So one of the things that they were saying was, he actually can predict now within 5 minutes around a couple, he can predict with 91% accuracy whether a couple will stay together or not, whether their marriage will succeed or fail. So the book has 11 chapters. It's not a huge book, as you can see, but very comprehensive. The 11 chapters, seven of those chapters are about the seven principles, a chapter for each principle. But also it is absolutely packed with the most wonderful exercises and assessment tools. So, I would say any couple who bought this book and used it actually worked their way through doing the exercises. I've done them. Alan and I did them some years ago, and they are absolutely wonderful, and especially the assessment tools as well. They're very, very good and very useful and very accessible and easy, and kind of, you can enjoy doing them and talking to each other about them. So, but also in here he talks about the myths about marriage failure, and how, there's a common belief around that if a couple have common interests, that's what makes their relationship work. Now, actually, I would say if a couple have common interests, it goes a long way to help their relationship in being compatible. But what Gottman's saying is, having, filmed a lot of couples who have got common interests, that doesn't necessarily make the relationship work. In fact, it's not the common interests, it is the respect that they have, the mutual respect that they have for each other, while they're carrying out their mutual interests. So he says what makes a good marriage is this mutual respect. They don't keep tabs on each other. There's a high level of friendship and support, as opposed to being competitive and engaged in power struggles. I mean, I notice when some couples come here, the whole time they're engaged in a power struggle, and they're competing for who's right, who's wrong, you know, who's the victim, who's the villain. So what Gottman's saying is that no, where a relationship is successful, there is a lot of support, there's a lot of acceptance and mutual respect between the couples. They support each other's aspirations and hopes. You know, that they have a vision for their future together. And so these are the kind of things that he says makes marriage work. So what are these 7 principles? Well, the first one is that they have, in successful marriages, a couple has a kind of what he calls a love map, in that they know about each other and they continue to learn about each other. So if you get the book, you'll see there's a list of questions that help you to form what he would call a love map about your partner. The second one is about nurturing your fondness and admiration. Now, that's kind of deliberately saying nice things to each other. I mean, Alan and I, if we've got a long car drive, a bit like children who play, you know, I Spy, as we're going along, we'll tell each other what it is that we love about each other. And, you know, we'll keep going and keep going for as long as we can and come up with all the new things to, well, most of it's been said, but doesn't do any harm to repeat it. The things that we love about each other, that we admire about each other, and the things that we just think is great. So I know it sounds a bit childish, but that's all right. It doesn't do any harm. And so principle 3 is couples who have a good relationship, they actually turn towards each other and not away from each other. So in other words, if somebody's got something that they want to say, but the other party is really busy, as opposed to the other party saying, oh, look, I haven't got time now, it's just tell me very quickly, and I'll come back to you about that later. So there's not a kind of a pushing away. There is always a making space and time for the other party. He talks also about a couple having an emotional bank account, and so, you know, the sort of things that I'm saying to you about giving the reasons why you love each other, that's kind of like, think of it as putting little coins in that emotional bank account, that constant day by day saying, you know, I really appreciate how kind you are, I really appreciate how thoughtful you are. Those kind of things keep your emotional bank account stocked up. So the 4th principle is to allow your partner to influence you. Some couples are a bit kind of unilateral. They go off and they make decisions by themselves. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't ever make a decision without consulting your partner, but important decisions, you would always discuss it with your partner, and irrespective of how strongly you feel about a course of action, you would always take whatever your partner thinks and feels into consideration as well. You would, you know, power share and not have one person who's dominant all the time. Couples with good relationships, also principle 5 is about they solve solvable problems. They don't get hung up on things that just cannot be changed. So he goes into discussing the difference between what's solvable and what's unsolvable. And principle 6 is about overcoming gridlock, about not getting stuck in the mundane and stuck in the day-to-day issues that might crop up, but also talking about deeper issues and deeper dreams. For example, I can remember saying to Alan, Do you have any unlived dreams? And when he stopped to think about that, it just occurred to him. He said, do you know, I've always wanted to drive over the Pyrenees in a four-wheel drive truck. And the conversation carried on, well, why have you not done that? And he said, oh, well, I just never thought about it, never got around to it. So we did talk about it. And then we got the truck and we went for 3 weeks and drove around the Pyrenees. And we did a lot of talking and admiring each other on the journey. The point is, it's about having those conversations that allow you to have some freedom, conversations that allow you to do stuff that you think, that you just don't get around to having. It's about freedom, about having some adventure, and just creating the opportunity to do that. So the 7th principle is about creating shared meaning. Now, you can only create shared meaning if you take time and spend time together and you actually talk about those things. But also, if you have family meaning is created by having family rituals like Christmases and Easter and holiday routines and rituals. Families sometimes don't have those, and children grow up and they go into new families and they don't have them either. It really does make a difference to, as the years pass by, to couples and the quality of their relationship if they have got family rituals. It doesn't mean that you have to get stuck in them and it's really rigid, but there's a sense of family in that. So the other thing that I thought was quite wonderful in this book that Gottman talks about, and that's the magic 5 R's. And the magic 5 R's are made up of the short periods of time that couples can spend together every morning, actually being mindful of it, making it count. In the evening when they meet up together again, reconnecting with each other before they settle down for the night at bedtime. Those are important times to actually explicitly see as time together. And then also the benefits of having a weekly date, and just it all adds up to about 5 hours a week. Now, you know, it's not a lot of time to invest to have a really quality marriage. So it's a great book and I would recommend it, and thank you for listening. And we'll meet again. Bye now.